Can one win buy you a week of quiet? The Steelers sure hope so. After a week that felt like a slow-motion headache, booze at home, questions about leadership, and a hot whisper about Mike Tomlin's future, Pittsburgh landed in Baltimore and did the thing teams talk about: responded. Aaron Rodgers, playing through a fractured wrist, looked every bit the veteran with something to prove. The defense made the stops when it mattered. The refs swung a replay in Pittsburgh's favor on a would-be game winner. Final score: Steelers 27, Ravens 22. Suddenly, the AFC North is back in black and gold hands at 7-6, with Baltimore a game back. If you want the emotional thumbnail, this was a relief valve. Rodgers even felt cheeky about it. "Means maybe you guys will shut the hell up for a week," he said after the game. "That's not arrogance. It's a pressure valve popping. Let the noise die down. Collect your breath and get back to work." For a team that lost 5 of 7 and copped a chorus of national doubt, one win like this buys oxygen. The game itself was messy, physical, and dramatic, exactly the kind of slop that tests veteran poise. Pittsburgh opened up early and built a lead. Rodgers finished with his best yardage of the season, 23 of 34 for 284 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 turnovers. He threw with clarity, hit DK Metcalf downfield, 7 catches, 148 yards, and avoided the late-game mistakes that had been haunting the offense. That mattered. When your offense has been listed in the low 20s all year, steadiness from the QB is everything. Baltimore didn't fold. Lamar Jackson moved the football when he had to, finishing 19 of 35 for 219 yards with a touchdown and an interception, and he chipped in on the ground. The Ravens leaned on the run. Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell both churned out tough gains, and they kept coming until the very end. They nearly ripped the lead away with a late touchdown that looked like it gave them the game, only for replay officials to rule Isaiah likely didn't complete the catch in the end zone. Boom. The touchdown was wiped out. The call flipped the script and swung momentum back to Pittsburgh. The Ravens then failed to convert on 4th and 5 in the red zone, and the Steelers closed the door with a defensive stop in the final 2 minutes. That overturned score is the kind of single moment that tilts a narrative. Sports are cruel that way. A catch that looks touchdown-ish on live TV becomes a season-defining reversal when replay takes one more look. For Baltimore, it was heartbreak. For Pittsburgh, it was a reprieve, an answer to the court of public opinion, and a giant exhale for the locker room. This win does more than fix the scoreboard. It buys the front office and Tomlin time. Pittsburgh's franchise culture has historically been patient with coaches, and they almost never fire midseason. But headlines had been loud and impatient. Now the franchise can point to 2 things. The veteran QB gave a performance, and the defense made late plays. That combination is the kind of evidence that blunts the clean house talk, at least temporarily. If Tomlin wants to keep the job argument away from the owner's desk, wins like this are the currency. Still, don't mistake this for a cure-all. The Steelers didn't suddenly become dominant. The ground game was quiet, the run defense showed vulnerabilities, and they still have schematic kinks to tidy. The Ravens' ground attack was physical, and Jackson showed he's not fully the MVP version yet. Injuries have limited him, and the unit hasn't looked like a championship contender consistently. Baltimore's season has become a slog of missed opportunities and nagging health questions, and their path back into division control is steeper now. Looking forward, this sets up a mouth-watering rematch in Week 18 that might well decide the division. Pittsburgh has given itself the simpler path, at least on paper, but the NFL calendar is cruel and full of late-season traps. Momentum matters, though. The Steelers can ride this and try to clinch with controlled, smart football over the next stretch. Baltimore must respond, and Coach Harbaugh will need clearer answers from a team that briefly threatened to recreate last season's surge, but instead slid the other direction. There's also the Rodgers angle, which can't be ignored. A 42-year-old quarterback with a busted wrist, still moving the offense and carrying the room. That's a leadership story. It's the kind of thing that galvanizes teammates the way a veteran's grit always does. But durability is a ledger issue. Playing hurt is heroic until it becomes reckless. The Steelers have to balance letting their leader will them to wins and protecting him enough to have him available down the stretch. For the Ravens, the loss is a reality check. They climbed out of a 1-5 hole earlier with a convincing streak, but 2 straight AFC North losses have them on uneven footing again. Jackson's limitations this year and a defense that sometimes looks banged up make their late-season climb feel like scaling a wet hill. Pressure is accumulating on everyone, players, coaches, and front office. And if Baltimore doesn't correct course quickly, the noise will swing this time toward Harbaugh and the next level of scrutiny. The human image here is sharp. A locker room that needed a win, an aging superstar standing up when his team required it, a replay official's whistle changing the meaning of a night, and 2 AFC rivals who now face the kind of final weeks that decide legacies and jobs. Whether this is the turning point Pittsburgh needs or merely a temporary truce with the critics is the story the next 4 games will write. Right now, the Steelers get to say they answered a tumultuous week with action. They quieted the crowd, at least for the moment, and regained control of the division. That's the simple, brutal currency of football. Wins by peace, and peace gives you the chance to fix what's broken. If Pittsburgh can build on this performance, the Tomlin question fades, and the team's real work, constructing consistency, begins in earnest. If they can't, the noise will come back. Louder. They came in loud and messy. Critics shouting about Mike Tomlin's job, headlines asking whether Pittsburgh had run out of gas. And for one Sunday night, the Steelers answered like a team that heard every word and decided to respond with football. Aaron Rodgers looked like a man on a mission and an old soul refusing to fade. He moved with a kind of clinical patience, stepping through reads, rifling when he had to, and threading throws that made a defense pay for the smallest mistakes. By the time the scoreboard read 27-22, you could see the night had tilted. Rodgers finished with crisp numbers, and for the Steelers, that was more than a stat line. It was a message. The game earned its drama early. Baltimore, desperate and dangerous even with injuries piling up, pushed the Steelers and forced moments that could have swung either way. But Pittsburgh punched first and kept punching. Screens blossomed into long gains. Play action worked because the O-line held when it mattered, and Jaylen Warren's 38-yard screen burst felt like a turning point. The play that let the Steelers breathe and the Ravens suddenly look human. Then the NFL's cruelest micro moment arrived. A would-be Ravens touchdown in the fourth quarter that turned into an overturned miracle. Isaiah likely hauled in a catch in the end zone, and for a heartbeat, the stadium and the visiting sideline believed Baltimore had snatched the lead. Replay said otherwise. Officials ruled the act of the catch incomplete. Just like that, a 28-27 lead dissolved back into nothing. The Ravens had to try again, failed on 4th and 5 in the red zone, and the opportunity vanished. You don't have to like replay to feel the weight of that call. For a team trying to climb back into form, for a coach under pressure, for a quarterback working through limited mobility after injuries, it was a gut punch. And yet the Steelers used it like fuel. When the Ravens drove later and threatened again, Pittsburgh's defense stiffened. 2 stops in the final minutes weren't luck. They were the kind of plays a team makes when it's determined not to let the narrative flip. Rodgers' line after the game, cut through the noise with a wink, means maybe you guys will shut the hell up for a week. He was teasing the reporters, but underneath it was a truth. This win didn't erase the problems, but it bought Tomlin and the roster a moment where critics have to hush up and watch tape. Lamar Jackson kept fighting for Baltimore. He did enough, 219 yards through the air, a rushing touchdown, to keep them dangerous, but it was clear he's not the same version of himself. The injuries have taken snaps and snap decisions away from the Ravens offense, and the roster around him looks more fragile than the preseason billing suggested. Derrick Henry and Keaton Mitchell still gave them physicality on the ground, but those rushing yards couldn't translate into the finishing plays the Ravens needed when the game tightened. Pittsburgh's defense, ranked low all season and mocked in some hot takes, showed up when it counted, which is the one thing that makes critics uncomfortable. It's not the stats that explain a team's life, it's the timing. Holding a team to 0 points on the final 2 possessions of the game is not an accident. It's discipline, alignment, and a refusal to buckle. This result changes more than the win column. It hands the Steelers control of the AFC North, if only temporarily, and forces the Ravens into a scramble. The two teams will meet again in Week 18 with the division on the line. Suddenly, every practice rep, every tape session, every injury update between now and then matters like a personal indictment of the season. For Tomlin, the margin for error hasn't disappeared. A few more bad games and the narrative returns. But Sunday bought him leverage. A win like this gives coaches breathing room. It also buys the locker room belief. Players will point to this night, a night they were counted out and chose to be louder than the questions. For the Ravens, the path forward looks harder. They've climbed out of a hole once this season with a 5-game streak, but momentum is fragile. The injuries to Jackson and others mean the team is improvising in high-leverage moments, and improvisation doesn't always beat execution. John Harbaugh will have to steady the ship because the next stretch of the schedule won't hand them easy answers. The human truth is simple. Football is an accumulation of tiny, decisive moments. A catch that's ruled incomplete, a screen that turns into a gasping dash, a fourth down stop. Tonight, those moments stacked in Pittsburgh's favor. They woke up a franchise, quieted a room of doubters for a week, and set up a finale that will matter for everything the AFC North still has to say this season. If you're a Steelers fan, savor it. If you're a Raven, learn fast. The division isn't decided yet, but the tone has shifted, and in the NFL, tone often becomes destiny.